I'm Jason Grubb, and in this video, I'm going to talk about my 30-day deliberate cold exposure experiment, the results of the experiment, and if I plan to continue. Like most of you, deliberately exposing myself to cold temperatures seemed a little crazy, but there's actually a lot of science behind it. In the past, I'd only used cold therapy after workouts from time to time, but the more I learned about the benefits of ice baths in the morning, the more intrigued I became. Temperature is a powerful stimulus that can have a huge impact on our bodies and our minds, and the benefits of cold exposure sounded pretty impressive. So I decided to take on a 30-day cold exposure challenge using my IceBarrel. The company, IceBarrel, had given me one of these things to test out and to try out. And honestly, I'll try anything that promises to improve my mental health, my physical health, and my athletic performance in only a few minutes a day. Was it cold? Hell yeah, it was cold. The results I noticed in myself and my life, and some of the science I've found behind it from doing some research. Most of this data and research comes from cold exposure pioneers Andrew Huberman and Wim Hof. For anyone interested in jumping right into cold therapy, it's important to start gradually and consult a doctor before starting any new cold exposure protocol.
Whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing.
Now that that's out of the way, let's jump in. To start off, I'm not gonna lie, it was damn cold. It still is. I'm not that guy who gets in and shows no pain. It steals my breath every time. There's a ton of internal resistance every day, and if it does nothing other than build my resilience, I'm happy enough. But I personally have found more results than just resilience. First, I found that I was able to think more clearly and had an easier time staying focused on tasks for longer periods throughout the day. I could get right to work after my plunge and stay in the zone longer than before. This is likely because cold exposure activates the sympathetic nervous system, which can help improve cognitive function and increase alertness. Next, I felt it had an impact on my sore muscles and the achy parts of my body. For example, I've been dealing with a bit of a lower back thing for a couple of months, and after the cold exposure, I found that it felt much better. It's still a little bit there, but it's improving. Cold exposure can increase the production of endorphins, which are natural painkillers. Last, anyone who knows me can attest that I run a little bit high. My RPMs are on this side of the line. I found that the greatest and most noticeable benefit was the increase in my mental well-being. I discovered that cold exposure can help reduce stress and improve my mental health. Research has shown that those endorphins I mentioned before can help improve mood, reduce stress and anxiety, and improve overall well-being, and I absolutely felt that through this process. There are a few additional benefits I found in my research. First, improved immune function and increased cardiovascular endurance. Cold water immersion has been shown to increase the production of white blood cells, which are essential for fighting off infection, and can also improve cardiovascular endurance by increasing the circulation of blood to the muscles. There are dozens of additional benefits of cold therapy, and one of my favorite resources for understanding this a bit more in a long format is the Andrew Huberman podcast, where he talks about cold exposure. It's about 2.5 hours long, but it's a really good listen. As I've posted on all my social channels about this cold plunge journey, I've gotten a ton of questions about cold exposure, and I'm going to answer a few of the top questions right here.
Question.
Is it safe to do cold exposure? Cold exposure can be safe as long as you take the necessary precautions. It's important to never get into a dangerous body of water, like a cold river where you could get swept away, and never hyperventilate before going into a situation where you're actually going to be swimming.
Question.
How cold should the water be for cold exposure? The ideal water temperature for cold exposure will vary from person to person. It's important to aim for a temperature that's really cold, but that you can safely stay in. Some people might tolerate a temperature of 60 degrees Fahrenheit, while others might prefer 45 degrees. The colder the stimulus, the shorter amount of time you need to expose yourself to it.
Question.
What's the best method for cold exposure? Ice baths or cold water immersions up to the neck over the shoulders. Cold showers can also be effective if you don't have access to an ice bath.
Question.
How can cold exposure increase energy and focus?
It's a ridiculous question. False.
Cold exposure causes the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine in the brain and body, which can make you feel alert and increase your energy and focus.
That's gold, Jerry.
These neurochemicals remain elevated for some time after the exposure, providing ongoing benefits to energy and focus.
Question.
How can cold exposure improve mood and build resilience and grit? This is my favorite one. By forcing yourself to embrace the stress of cold exposure as a meaningful challenge, you can exercise top-down control over deeper brain centers that regulate reflexive states. This can build resilience and grit, which are skills that can be applied to other situations outside the cold exposure environment. This is like getting into the pain cave without doing additional training.
Okay, question.
How can cold exposure boost metabolism and weight loss?
It increases the density and/or activity of what we call brown fat,
which is a type of fat that is more metabolically active than other types of fat. Cold exposure can also increase the production of adrenaline, which can increase the breakdown of fat cells. If you're interested in trying cold exposure for yourself, here are some tips. You might begin by taking cold showers. I tried this for a while, a couple of years ago, and I didn't like it, but there's others that have really enjoyed cold showers. If all you've got is a shower, a cold shower may be the place for you. Start with a lukewarm shower and gradually decrease the temperature over the course of a few minutes. Stay in the cold water for as long as you can handle it, gradually increasing the duration over time. You'll also want to practice the Wim Hof breathing technique. It's fantastic and preps you for really tough situations, especially like getting into an ice bath. This involves taking rapid, deep breaths in and out in a specific pattern. The goal is to build up your body's tolerance, which helps improve your immune system and increases your overall well-being. This is also a practice that you can do without getting into cold water. You can go to YouTube and search for the Wim Hof breathing method, and you'll find his specific tutorials for how to do this 30 breath technique. And when you feel ready, you should buy an ice barrel. Can you create your own ice barrel? Absolutely. You can buy trash cans at Walmart or giant barrels. These are all fantastic options, but I like the ice barrel because it's very sturdy. It's basically bulletproof. It has a drain in the bottom and a solid cover as well as stairs. All of these things make it much easier to just get up and go with this thing. It's delivered to your front door, take it out of the box, fill it with water the next day, add the ice, and just get going. Your progress. Just keep a journal to document your experience, track any changes that you feel physically or mentally to help reinforce if this is a habit that you'd like to keep or something that's just really not for you. So am I going to continue? You bet your ass. Besides coffee in the morning, it's becoming my favorite part of the day. I feel invigorated and can't deny the positive effects it's had on my mood, my physical well-being, and my performance. I actually look forward to the cold plunge every morning. Give it a go and let me know how it goes in the comments below.